When news broke across international networks that a state-of-the-art stealth aircraft had been forced down over hostile territory in Iran, opposing military strategists' brief celebrations were short-lived. To an untrained eye, the loss of an advanced warplane appears to be a staggering defeat, a sudden display of vulnerability that enemies are eager to parade before the world. But those who understand the cold logic of modern warfare knew that the moment the aircraft touched the ground, the battlefield dynamics underwent a terrifying shift. The true power of the American war machine was never defined solely by its invisible wings or radar-evading hull, but by an unyielding, almost supernatural doctrine that dictates no soldier, pilot, or operator will ever be abandoned to the mercy of a foreign power. In those tense initial hours, as adversary forces mobilized their patrols to secure what they believed was a prize, they were not hunting a stranded survivor. They were unknowingly stepping into a carefully orchestrated nightmare. The immediate deployment of elite extraction units, operating under zero visibility and utilizing overwhelming technological and tactical dominance, transformed a potential hostage crisis into a brutal demonstration of absolute reach. Before enemy command structures could even process the geographical location of the crash site, spearhead rescue elements had already penetrated their airspace, neutralized localized defenses with terrifying precision, and snatched the pilot from the jaws of capture. It was a swift, humiliating reminder to hostile regimes that knocking down an American aircraft does not signal a victory. It merely invites the full, focused rage of the most dangerous military apparatus on Earth straight to their doorstep. This relentless obsession with recovery is not a modern luxury created by satellite communications or digital targeting systems, but a deeply ingrained military tradition forged in the blood and chaos of history's most savage battlefields. Decades before stealth technology existed, when the skies over war-torn Europe were choked with flak and burning aluminum, enemy generals learned to fear the aftermath of a downed Allied plane far more than the bombing runs themselves. During the height of the Second World War, when fortified Nazi strongholds seemed entirely impenetrable, the downing of a high-value American aviator frequently triggered rescue operations so audacious and psychologically shattering that they left high-ranking Wehrmacht officers in a state of utter delusion and panic. German commanders quickly realized that an isolated pilot hiding in dense pine forests or alpine ridges was not a helpless target, but an irresistible magnet for specialized American units who would shatter entire defensive lines, bypass fortified garrisons, and risk total destruction just to retrieve a single airborne veteran. The psychological toll on the enemy was devastating, as seasoned generals watched their heavily defended sectors destabilize not from massive frontline offensives, but from surgical, relentless extraction teams operating with a cold, terrifying determination that defied traditional military strategy. To fully comprehend the psychological weight of this doctrine, one must step into the boots of an enemy commander standing in a dimly lit war room, staring at a topographical map covered in tactical markers. On paper, the mathematical advantage belongs entirely to the occupying forces. They control the roads, they hold the high ground, and they possess thousands of heavily armed troops stationed in fixed defensive positions across the sector. Yet, the moment radio chatter confirms that an American bomber or reconnaissance plane has spun out of control and plummeted into their territory, a heavy, suffocating paranoia begins to grip the officers in charge. They know that a clock has started ticking, and time is violently working against them. While the local garrison is frantically dispatched to scour the countryside, expecting to find a trembling aviator ready to surrender, the American command structure is already initiating a shadow protocol designed to turn the enemy's backyard into a chaotic killing zone. What the occupying forces fail to grasp until it is far too late is that the isolated pilot is never truly alone. Above the cloud cover, hidden assets are already mapping every enemy search party, tracking military frequencies, and coordinating a response that defies standard infantry doctrine. When the extraction team finally makes contact, it does not resemble a cautious rescue attempt. It unfolds as a sudden, terrifying storm of overwhelming firepower and tactical subversion. Specialized squads, trained to operate in absolute darkness, move through enemy lines with a ghost-like efficiency, striking isolated checkpoints, cutting communications, and creating false alarms that send entire garrisons chasing phantoms in the night. By the time enemy officers realize that their search parties are being systematically ambushed and outmaneuvered, the target has been secured, and the extraction team is disappearing back into the shadows, leaving behind a baffled, humiliated command structure questioning their own security. This stark contrast between enemy arrogance and American resolve reveals a fundamental truth about why hostile regimes, both in the dark days of the mid-20th century and in the high-tech battlegrounds of today, remain deeply unnerved by American military culture. For many totalitarian forces, an individual soldier is merely expendable material, a numerical statistic to be consumed in the machinery of war and discarded without a second thought. But when an adversary confronts a nation that treats the life of a single downed airman as a sacred obligation worth mobilizing an entire theater of operations for, the strategic equation breaks down entirely. It instills a lingering, demoralizing dread in the hearts of enemy officers, forcing them to realize that no matter how deep into hostile territory an American goes, the vast, terrifying reach of their country will follow them into the dark to bring them home. To witness the true origin of this psychological warfare, one must travel back to the bitterly cold autumn of 1944, deep within the heavily fortified perimeter of occupied Western Europe. High above the cloud cover, the sky roared with the deafening thunder of Allied engines as heavy bombers and agile fighter escorts carved their way through curtains of deadly anti-aircraft flak. Among them flew a lone reconnaissance P-51 Mustang, tasked with gathering critical photo intelligence over a heavily guarded regional headquarters controlled by senior Wehrmacht and SS commanders. Without warning, a hidden battery of heavy German guns opened fire, tearing a jagged hole through the aircraft's fuselage and sending black smoke billowing into the freezing air. Within seconds, the engine sputtered out, locking the propeller in place and sending the aircraft into a steep, uncontrollable dive toward the dense, unforgiving tree line below. On the ground, the explosion and the trailing plume of smoke triggered an immediate wave of celebration among the German garrison. From their fortified watchtowers, sentries raised their binoculars, tracking the falling debris and watching with satisfaction as a white parachute blossomed against the gray sky, drifting slowly down into a remote, heavily patrolled valley. For the local Wehrmacht commander, a decorated colonel who had grown increasingly frustrated by constant Allied air dominance, this downed aviator represented an immense tactical prize. High Command had issued strict orders regarding captured Allied pilots, particularly those operating fast reconnaissance craft, as their maps and camera equipment held priceless information regarding secret defense lines. Confident in his numerical superiority, the colonel immediately dispatched motorized infantry patrols, motorcycle squads, and tracking dogs to secure the crash site, fully convinced that the stranded American would be bound and in chains before the sun dipped below the horizon. Yet, as the search parties fanned out into the dense timberland, an unsettling silence settled over the countryside. What should have been a routine capture quickly began to sour as the first hours passed without a single radio confirmation from the leading search units. The colonel, pacing nervously beside his tactical map in the garrison headquarters, monitored the radio frequencies, expecting every minute to hear that the young pilot had been hunted down and restrained. Instead, his officers reported finding only a discarded parachute tangled in the high branches of an oak tree, with fresh footprints leading straight into the dark, uncharted wilderness. Unbeknownst to the overconfident German officers, the young aviator was not merely running for his life. He was trained in advanced escape and evasion tactics, carrying specialized survival gear and a compact radio transmitter capable of sending coded signals directly back to Allied intelligence headquarters. As night began to envelope the rugged landscape, bringing with it a biting frost and pitch-black conditions, the mood within the German garrison shifted dramatically from triumph to deep concern. The colonel's radio operators picked up an unexpected burst of encrypted, high-frequency radio chatter cut clean through the static, originating from deep within their supposedly secure perimeter. It was a brief, precise transmission, lasting only a few seconds, but it was more than enough to send a cold shudder through the ranks of the German intelligence officers. The stranded American was not hiding in a ditch waiting to freeze or starve. He had successfully established contact with his base, transmitting his exact grid coordinates, local enemy troop movements, and the location of nearby defensive artillery emplacements. The hunters had suddenly become the observed, as every movement of the German search parties was being quietly logged and relayed to Allied commanders across the front lines. Realizing the extreme danger of the situation, the German colonel ordered a full mobilization, pulling men away from critical defensive strongpoints to form an impenetrable cordon around the valley. He doubled the guard at all regional checkpoints, deployed additional armor, and ordered his officers to shoot on sight, determined to eliminate the threat before the situation spiraled completely out of control. Yet, every tactical decision made in desperation only played further into the American strategy. By massing troops into the forest to hunt a single airman, the colonel had unwittingly exposed vulnerabilities across his wider sector, weakening key defense lines and creating massive gaps in his operational perimeter. The quiet confidence that had filled the German war room just hours prior dissolved into an atmosphere of suffocating tension, as senior officers realized they were no longer conducting a simple search operation, but wrestling with a volatile crisis engineered by a single soldier behind their lines. To make matters worse, reports began trickling in from outer outposts describing strange, disorienting occurrences along the perimeter. Sentry posts reported hearing faint engine noises echoing through the mountain passes, while distant flares illuminated the night sky, blinding German spotters and creating chaos among the search patrols. The enemy high command was quickly coming to a terrifying realization. The single-downed pilot was not just an isolated survivor fighting for his own life, but the anvil upon which a far larger, far more lethal American rescue operation was about to strike. The stage was now set for a violent collision, as elite Allied extraction elements prepared to breach one of the most heavily fortified sectors in occupied Europe, turning the German colonel's carefully laid trap into a nightmare of absolute panic. While German ground forces frantically combed through dense woods under the shroud of darkness, a far more sophisticated machinery had already been set into motion hundreds of miles away at Allied joint operations. The brief, encrypted signal transmitted from the aviator's portable radio was intercepted, authenticated, and immediately escalated to top-level commanders. In a matter of minutes, an elite intelligence cell, specialized in clandestine extractions and unconventional warfare, activated what was known internally as the Shadow Protocol. This was not a hastily assembled rescue attempt, but a cold, mathematically precise response system designed to exploit every vulnerability within the enemy's defensive network. High-altitude radio intercept aircraft were redirected to orbit the sector, sweeping the airwaves to capture every anxious transmission made by the German colonel and his panicked officers. As German commanders barked orders over unencrypted shortwave channels, American intelligence operators meticulously mapped out the locations of enemy garrisons, armored reserves, and anti-aircraft batteries. Every movement of the German search parties was being pinpointed on tactical maps in real time, exposing massive gaps in their defense lines created by the colonel's reckless redeployment of troops. The American Extraction Command did not view the heavily fortified German zone as an insurmountable wall, but as a fractured maze filled with blind spots waiting to be exploited. Special operations executive operatives and local resistance assets embedded within nearby villages were immediately alerted, receiving precise grid coordinates to establish a secure perimeter around the downed pilot's hidden position. Back inside the German war room, the atmosphere was growing increasingly chaotic as conflicting reports poured in from the front lines. Senior officers began arguing over troop allocations, with some insisting that the search was a trap meant to draw forces away from strategic bridges, while others demanded more infantry be thrown into the forest. The German colonel, under immense pressure from high command to deliver results, made the fatal mistake of dividing his forces into smaller, isolated search squads to cover more ground. By dispersing his men across miles of pitch-black, treacherous terrain, he effectively stripped them of their fire support and played directly into the hands of the elite American operators who were quietly assembling on the outskirts of the sector. As the German search parties blundered into the freezing darkness, unaware that their movements were being mapped, the American extraction team was executing its approach with terrifying discipline. Operating under total radio silence, specialized vanguard units reached the outer boundaries of the contested valley. They did not arrive with heavy armor or loud troop transports that would alert the garrison, but moved on foot, utilizing terrain features and dense tree canopies to bypass hostile observation posts. Armed with suppressed weaponry and specialized night vision equipment ahead of its time, these operators moved like specters through the woods, quietly neutralizing German sentries who had been isolated from their main platoons. Every silent takedown was calculated to delay discovery, leaving the German command structure entirely unaware that their outer defensive ring had already been breached. Meanwhile, deep within his improvised shelter under a fallen pine tree, the downed aviator remained motionless, clutching his sidearm and listening to the distant shouts of German searchers. He knew that any sudden movement could reveal his position to the tracking dogs patrolling the ridge above. But he also knew that the brief signal he had sent hours earlier was doing its work. Through his compact radio receiver, a series of short, rhythmic clicks confirmed that friendly forces were closing in on his coordinates. The fear of capture was replaced by a cold, sharp focus. He was no longer just a hunted soldier trying to stay alive. He had become the anchor for an imminent, devastating counterattack that would turn the entire enemy sector upside down. In the German headquarters, the psychological pressure reached a breaking point when reports of silent cut communications began arriving from multiple perimeter posts. The colonel, looking at his tactical board, realized with horror that 3 of his forward squads had simply stopped responding. The realization hit the German officers like a physical blow. They were not hunting a helpless, injured pilot who was waiting to give up. They were surrounded by a ghost-like force that was systematically dismantling their security network from the inside out. Panic began to spread through the command chain as officers realized that their fortress-like sector was no longer a safe zone, but a trap closing in on them. Deep within the frozen woodlands, the isolation of the downed aviator became a psychological battlefield in its own right. Temperatures plummeted far below freezing, and a relentless mountain wind whistled through the dense pine branches, threatening to expose anyone seeking shelter among the rocks. Armed with only a standard-issue sidearm, a survival knife, and a pocket-sized emergency map, the pilot moved with agonizing slowness through the shadows, constantly monitoring his surroundings for the crunch of boots on frozen leaves or the sudden flash of a German search beam. He was well aware that an entire enemy garrison was actively sweeping the sector, but he also understood that survival in hostile territory relied not on raw firepower, but on discipline, patience, and absolute stealth. Every step was deliberate, taking advantage of natural terrain dips, frozen riverbeds, and thick brush to mask his trail from the tracking hounds echoing in the distance. While the airman carefully positioned himself near a prominent rocky outcrop designated in his encrypted transmission, the elite American rescue squad was pressing deep into the heart of the enemy's defense grid. Navigating through dense, uncharted timberland without the aid of lanterns or heavy vehicles, these specialized operators relied on rigorous training and tactical intuition to outmaneuver German patrols. They moved in a loose, flexible formation, silently communicating through hand signals as they bypassed hostile outposts and fortified road junctions. The German defenders, expecting a noisy conventional attack across primary roadways, had left their rear flanks dangerously exposed. The stealthy insertion of the Allied strike element turned the enemy's vast numerical superiority into a useless liability, as thousands of Wehrmacht soldiers remained positioned along static defense lines while the real threat glided quietly behind them. As the hours dragged toward the early morning, the tension within the forest reached an unbearable pitch. A German patrol, accompanied by handler dogs, closed to within 50 yards of the pilot's concealed ridge line. The airman held his breath, pressing his body flat against the icy soil, his finger resting lightly against the trigger of his pistol. Through the dark, he could see the silhouette of German soldiers scanning the treeline with flashlights, their voices tight with fatigue and growing anxiety. They were mere moments from discovering his position, but just as the lead tracking dog raised its snout to catch the airman's scent, a sharp, muffled disturbance echoed from a neighboring valley. A carefully placed distraction, engineered by the approaching Allied extraction team, instantly diverted the German patrol, sending them charging into the darkness toward a phantom threat and leaving the path clear for the final link-up. As the decoy explosions echoed across the eastern ridge, drawing the German tracking dogs and main search platoons away, the Allied vanguard team slipped through the newly created void in the perimeter. Moving with silent synchronization, the operators reached the designated coordinates where the downed aviator lay in wait. The link-up was executed with cold professionalism, no loud celebrations or wasted seconds, only a swift tactical exchange of identification signals and an immediate assessment of the pilot's physical condition. Though battered, exhausted, and suffering from the severe cold, the airman was fully capable of moving under his own power. He was immediately equipped with an extra submachine gun and integrated into the center of the extraction element. But reaching the survivor was only half the battle. Navigating back out through an alerted, heavily armed enemy garrison would test the limits of their endurance and skill. By this time, panic in the German headquarters had evolved into a state of sheer operational paralysis. The German colonel was receiving contradictory field reports from every corner of the valley, indicating enemy contact in sectors miles apart from one another. His communications network was collapsing as Allied sabotage units cut landlines and jammed tactical radio channels, leaving forward outposts completely isolated in the dark. Believing he was under attack by a full Allied airborne battalion rather than a small, surgical strike unit, the colonel made the disastrous decision to recall his perimeter guards to fortify his central command bunker. This movement inadvertently cleared the primary escape route for the extraction team, leaving key mountain passes and river crossings completely unguarded just as the Allied squad reached the outer border. As the first light of dawn began to bleed over the horizon, casting long, dramatic shadows across the snow-covered valley, the extraction team crossed the final perimeter line, slipping undetected into the safety of Allied-controlled territory. Behind them lay a completely humiliated German garrison, its officers left searching an empty forest and attempting to explain to high command how a heavily fortified sector had been breached, thrown into chaos, and stripped of its prize without a single Allied soldier being captured. The legend of the unbroken rescue doctrine was once again written in the snows of Europe, proving to an astonished enemy that no barrier of concrete, steel, or firepower could ever sever the reach of American military resolve. By the early hours of dawn, the psychological shockwave of the extraction operation had reverberated all the way up the German chain of command, triggering a crisis that extended far beyond a single valley. In the command bunkers of the regional Wehrmacht headquarters, senior generals sat in stunned disbelief as after-action reports revealed the full scope of the failure. What had begun as the routine tracking of an isolated airman had spiraled into a catastrophic breakdown of sector security. The German High Command had operated under the long-standing assumption that their heavily fortified garrisons, layered defense lines, and vast troop reserves created an impenetrable fortress through which no Allied force could operate without initiating a massive, frontal assault. Yet, a small, surgical extraction team had bypassed these formidable barriers, executed its objective directly behind their lines, and vanished back into Allied territory without leaving behind a single captive or usable intelligence lead. The realization that an enemy force could penetrate their most secure zones at will injected a profound sense of paranoia into every level of the German officer corps. If American operators could enter a locked-down sector, locate a hidden individual, and extract him under the noses of an entire regiment, then no command bunker, supply depot, or headquarters was safe from a similar fate. German generals began questioning the loyalty and competence of their own perimeter guards, launching paranoid internal investigations and reassigning entire units in a desperate attempt to patch vulnerabilities that they could neither quantify nor fully understand. The doctrine of absolute recovery had exposed a glaring psychological weakness in the authoritarian regime. While the German war machine relied on rigid, top-down control that paralyzed under unexpected chaos, the American forces thrived in unpredictable environments, leveraging individual initiative, adaptability, and overwhelming speed to force their enemy into constant panic. As dawn fully illuminated the sector, the aftermath of the rescue operation left a lingering shadow over German military planning for the remainder of the war. Intelligence officers who analyzed the site found no abandoned equipment, no radio logs, and no physical evidence of the extraction team beyond a few faint tracks vanishing into the treeline. What they faced instead was a humiliating reality. Their elaborate network of checkpoints, heavy artillery emplacements, and motorized patrols had been completely outmaneuvered by a handful of determined operators utilizing absolute tactical surprise. The colonel in charge of the sector was quietly relieved of his command shortly after, but the damage to troop morale could not be undone so easily. Soldiers stationed along the perimeter began looking into the dark forests with an acute sense of vulnerability, knowing that the vast umbrella of Allied intelligence and special operations was watching their every move, waiting for the slightest opportunity to strike. This psychological breach redefined how military strategists viewed the concept of behind-the-lines operations. The extraction showed that an authoritarian regime's reliance on brute force and rigid hierarchy could be turned into its greatest liability when pitted against rapid, decentralized initiative. Every order issued by the German High Command during those critical hours had been delayed by bureaucracy and fear of failure, while the American rescue elements operated with fluid adaptability, adjusting their plans in real time to exploit every opening created by enemy confusion. The incident served as a stark warning to hostile forces throughout the theater. Capturing an American airman or forcing a plane out of the sky was not a tactical victory, but a catalyst that brought down a terrifying, relentless response capable of dismantling their security from within. As the rescue team consolidated their perimeter around the recovered airman, the window for a quiet withdrawal rapidly slammed shut. The disturbance caused by the decoy explosions had bought precious minutes, but enemy reinforcements were already converging on the sector in overwhelming numbers. Motorized columns and armored scout cars, alerted by the sudden loss of radio contact with forward outposts, began locking down the surrounding secondary roads and mountain passes. The Allied extraction element, carrying an injured and exhausted pilot through snow-choked ravines, found themselves facing a coordinated encirclement designed to crush them before they could reach friendly lines. Yet, rather than falling into panic under the pressure of incoming fire, the operators executed a textbook fighting retreat, leveraging suppressive fire and superior marksmanship to break through the enemy's advancing skirmish lines. In the darkness, the clash devolved into a series of sharp, brutal firefights where mobility and tactical discipline proved far more lethal than heavy armor. Moving from ridge to ridge, the American operators deployed smoke grenades and short bursts of automatic fire to keep the pursuing Wehrmacht patrols at bay. Every attempt by German squad leaders to pin down the extraction unit was met with aggressive flank attacks that left the pursuers disoriented and hesitant to press forward. Overhead, the low hum of Allied fighter bombers provided a constant psychological threat, forcing German armor commanders to keep their vehicles concealed under thick tree cover rather than risking open pursuit. The extraction team exploited this hesitation, melting back into the shadows of the forest and systematically severing the enemy's pursuit vectors one by one. By utilizing deep ravines and natural rock formations, the vanguard operators maintained a steady forward momentum, absorbing incoming mortar rounds and automatic fire without losing operational cohesion. The downed aviator, shielded at the center of the formation, provided critical real-time battlefield observations, identifying key landmarks and enemy ambush points from his memory of aerial intelligence maps. As enemy pursuit units pressed closer, expecting the Allied team to slow down under the burden of their survivor, the extraction element executed a series of localized counter-ambushes. Small rearguard teams held high ground positions just long enough to inflict heavy casualties on the leading German elements before vanishing into the tree line to rejoin the main column. This aggressive, unpredictable defense forced the Wehrmacht commanders to halt their advance repeatedly, fearful of running headlong into a far larger Allied blocking force. As the morning light fully broke across the sector, the extraction team reached the edge of the contested zone, making contact with Allied motorized patrols staged along the frontline perimeter. The transition from intense combat to absolute security was swift. The aviator was immediately transferred to a field medical unit while the extraction operators secured their equipment and prepared their after-action debriefing. Behind them, the German sector remained in absolute disarray. Piles of unused ammunition, abandoned search positions, and conflicting radio logs bore witness to an operational fiasco that would haunt the local garrison for months. The mission had succeeded not through sheer numerical weight, but through the seamless combination of precise intelligence, psychological dominance, and an unshakable commitment to bring every soldier home regardless of the cost. Decades after the snows of 1944 melted, the psychological doctrine forged in the fires of World War II continues to define modern warfare. From the frozen forests of occupied Europe to the high-tech, satellite-monitored skies over hostile regions today, the core message remains entirely unchanged. When hostile regimes attempt to turn the downing of an American aircraft into a propaganda victory, they consistently fail to comprehend the psychological mechanism driving their adversary. What enemies view as a vulnerability is, in reality, the activation trigger for an overwhelming, relentless operational machine that will stop at nothing to bring its operators home. The same invisible line of honor that sent elite units breaching Nazi strongholds is what dictated the lightning-fast extraction of modern pilots in hostile territory, reminding the world that American military power is defined not just by its weapons, but by its refusal to leave anyone behind. This unyielding commitment creates a profound tactical dilemma for adversaries around the globe. To capture an American soldier is to invite a surgical, terrifying force directly into one's backyard, exposing entire command structures to chaos, subversion, and total defeat. Totalitarian regimes, built on the belief that human life is expendable, will never truly understand a nation where the life of a single airman can mobilize an entire fleet. It is a doctrine that instills a permanent, lingering dread in the hearts of hostile commanders, forcing them to realize that no matter how deep into the shadows an American operator falls, the long, lethal reach of their country will always come to claim them. As we look back at history and witness the modern battlefields of today, a fundamental moral question emerges that continues to divide military strategists and historians alike. Is a nation justified in risking dozens of elite operators, millions of dollars in equipment, and the stability of an entire frontline sector just to rescue a single downed soldier behind enemy lines? Some argue that such extreme extraction missions endanger more lives than they save, turning minor incidents into potentially catastrophic escalations. Others maintain that this unshakable promise is the very soul of military honor, providing soldiers with the supreme confidence required to face impossible odds knowing they will never be forgotten. What do you believe? Does risking an entire unit to save one life demonstrate ultimate national strength, or is it a dangerous tactical gamble that puts the wider mission at risk? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let us know where you stand on this eternal debate. If this deep dive into military strategy and forgotten heroism gave you a new perspective, hit the like button and subscribe to Hidden in Brazil for more untold historical investigations. Stay vigilant, trust the facts, and we will see you in the next episode.